Hello everybody, welcome back to Open Your Mind. Welcome to our Sunday weather informational special. Today we are going to be talking about El Niño 2026 to 2027, but specifically the top 10 cities which will be most affected by El Niño 2026 to 2027, since it's most likely going to be a very strong to super El Niño, looking like 3 degrees to 4 degrees above average. That would make it the strongest in living memory since 1950. And it's been recently announced by many major weather corporations like the Met Office and the NOCA, the American one. And we are going to be discussing specifically the top 10 cities which are going to be affected and the economical, social and environmental effects of each of those cities. Since I've already done a video on El Niño a couple of months ago, I'm not going to be explaining the mechanics of El Niño here, but if you do want to know the mechanics of El Niño, please do click on my YouTube channel, and there is a video on El Niño there, which is very good, and it looks at the effects of El Niño all across the world in every single continent, except the ones which with no human inhabitants, because that would be a waste of time. But today we're going to be looking at the 10 cities which are most affected by El Niño. So let's stop rabbling on and get on with it. The 10th most affected city by El Niño is a population 11,670,000, GDP 210 billion. Where is Lima located in the world? Lima is located in the continent of South America. It is located in the country of Peru. It is located on the western Pacific coast of Peru. It is the capital of Peru. Hello everybody, welcome back. Lima is widely predicted to be on the front line, or the city which sees the first effects from El Niño, truly because it is the closest to the equatorial Pacific and the epicenter of warm water in equatorial Pacific. Therefore, it's going to see the first effects of El Niño. And since El Niño is 3 to 4 degrees, predicted to be 3 to 4 degrees, it is going to be extreme to dangerous. These effects, the Pacific meteorological and weather effects that are often seen, Pacific weather dangers and hazards in Lima are 2 specific ones. First, flooding, and the second one is mudslides, or otherwise known locally as hukosia or hukos. I will put that on the screen if I'm not pronouncing that right. First of all, I want to talk about mudslides and how these happen and how these can negatively affect the city. Mudslides, or as the locals call it, hukasa, is probably the most dangerous weather hazard Lima has to face from El Niño 2026 to 2027, especially if the predicted strength of El Niño is 3 to 4 degrees, which is very strong to super El Niño. Therefore, these mudslides could be extreme to dangerous. How do these mudslides occur from El Niño? So, as we know, warm water naturally sits in the Pacific, in Southeast Asia, or it usually sits in the main areas it sits is off Northeast Australia and Papua New Guinea, Indonesia and the Philippines. And that is a very wide area of ocean. As the warm seawater crosses the equatorial Pacific, it condenses in a much smaller area and gains heat because of that. Therefore, this warm sea area is very close to the South American coast and parts of Central America, but is extremely close to Lima. So therefore, this extreme heat sends away the fish. That's why, because the heat, the warm water goes the warm water goes so far down, it breaks the natural cold water deep sea. There's a natural cold water really deep down off the South American coast near Peru, and that's why they have such a rich fishing in industry and sector in Peru, and especially Lima. And it was named El Niño, or Little Boy. I don't know why Little Boy is named, because the fishermen every 5 to 7 years found the fish, because that cold water was replaced with warm water deep down, disappeared, went somewhere else, and that's why they called it Little Boy. I don't know how no fish represents the little boy, but I'm not going to explain that now because I think that's just going to be a waste of time. But so therefore, there's warm water, and this creates and therefore it is so hot it starts evaporating. And the evaporation releases extreme tropical thunderstorms. And due to Lima and the western Pacific coast of Peru having a Pacific meteorological and physical weather pattern, the Andes mountain range acts like a physical wall right behind the city. Those violent storms that creates a force. Those violent storms are forced to dump their torrential rain directly into the steep mountain peaks. And as I'm going to show you later, hopefully, I'm showing you like a video of Lima's street view, and later on, it might already be now, I'm showing you the outskirts of Lima, and those outskirts, residential areas, are starting to get into those altitudes of the lower parts of the Andes, and this are the main areas which are extremely at risk of mudslides, because that water and mud coming down from the mountain, there's nothing stopping it. So this could, there's quite a lot of houses here, and there's quite a lot of houses, and they could just, this could seriously be, if it's a massive and very dangerous mudslide, this could endanger people's lives, and it could destroy a huge amount of infrastructure. So either way, this could be extremely devastating. Right, now we're going to go on to floods. Flooding for Lima is more a secondary effect of the hucasa, or mudslides, because heavy rain is being dumped on the top of the Andes, and Lima is in the valley between the Andes and the sea, so therefore the water is just going to gush down with the mudslides, which is more dangerous to people, and then it's going to accumulate in the city centre. This could destroy a lot of infrastructure, destroy a lot of houses, make a lot of houses unlivable. It could also carry secondary effects such as waterborne diseases like cholera, and this could seriously endanger people's health, and maybe even the elderly, more vulnerable people, be deadly. And the third effect would most likely be massive disruption to the economy, and this could hurt their economy a lot. Peru is predicted, because of El Niño, to lose 5% of its annual GDP because of El Niño. And specifically for Lima, it is predicted to lose 10.5 billion to 21 billion out of its annual 210 billion economy. On to the next city. The 9th most city which is going to be most affected by El Niño 2026 to 2027 is Jakarta. Key statistics and fun facts about Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta, Indonesia's GDP annually is 245 billion USD. Recently, from the United Nations, it has been awarded, compared to their city ranking, the largest city in the world, with roughly a population of 41.7 million. Jakarta is the capital of Indonesia, but it is being transferred to another city in the country called Nusa Tenggara. But legally, Jakarta is still the capital, but that might change in the future. Jakarta is located in Asia, specifically Southeast Asia. It is located in the country of Indonesia, which borders Malaysia and Papua New Guinea. It is also located in the southwest part of the country in the island called Java. And on the island of Java in Indonesia, it's located on the northeast side of the island of Java. Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta's weather hazards from El Niño 2026 to 2027 will be drought and toxic smog. First of all, I want to talk about drought first because that leads on to toxic smog. So, because the warmer sea temperatures around the Philippines, parts of Indonesia, and parts of northeast Australia and Papua New Guinea have travelled across the equatorial Pacific to the coast of South America and Central America, and also that is reversed or dramatically decreased the strength of the trade winds. This dramatically cuts off any, first of all, tropical thunderstorms forming from the sea and less moisture coming from the trade winds. So this is going to extremely lash the amount of annual rainfall Indonesia does, and it lashes a huge amount off. It lashes a whopping 40 to 60% off the annual rainfall. So therefore, this is going to create major droughts. Since Indonesia is a tropical country and it grows tropical plants and vegetables, these will be sucked of water, therefore they'll die. Their crop, Indonesia and Jakarta's crop sector and primary sector will be destroyed. Will absolutely, it will be seriously endangered. This could lose them millions or billions. We'll see later on. But this is going to be extremely dangerous, and it could even get to the point where water scarcity in cities like Jakarta actually becomes, it's away from the plants dying, it's now water scarcity for populations. So this could, in my view, be the worst outcome and the biggest incident that could occur from El Niño 2026 to 2027 in Jakarta. So the toxic smog will lead on from the drought. Toxic smog. It's really sad in Indonesia because no rain is their lifeline, and no rain with all their plants where they're usually very humid and it's so much rain over all their plants and vegetation. It remains very hot but very humid, so therefore all their plants are nice and moist and they're not going to catch on fire very easily. But when you lash away 40 to 60% of their precipitation, therefore their vegetation becomes a lot drier and it starts dying, and when it dies it's just still very, very dry, and therefore that's just opened the gates to severe wildfires. And those severe wildfires, they burn thousands of acres, thousands of hectares of vegetation, and therefore that just releases toxic smog into the air, and that spreads to big cities like Jakarta. And therefore, those areas, vulnerable people there, or the vulnerable people, or most of the population, that leaves them exposed to secondary impacts like respiratory problems and respiratory problems, lung problems. It's just very sad. It's just such an extreme negative feedback loop we're having in Jakarta. How is this going to affect their economy? How is El Niño 2026 to 2027 going to affect Indonesia and Jakarta's economy? Indonesia's economy without El Niño is 1.4 trillion, but because El Niño is going to dry out crops, it is going to cripple the agriculture sector, and therefore this does equate for a decent percentage of the sector, and this could easily shave off 15 to 32 billion off their GDP. That's about 1.5 to 3%, and the same goes for Jakarta. The normal GDP of Jakarta under is obviously 245 billion, but it could shave off 6.4 billion to 16 billion. This is 3 to 6%, purely because of that it's going to cripple food and agriculture. The 8th city most affected by El Niño 2026 to 2027 is Los Angeles, California, United States of America. Key statistics about Los Angeles. GDP 1.2 trillion, making it one of the largest metropolitan economies in the world. Population 12.5 million. Where is Los Angeles located in the world? It's located in the continent of North America. It is located in the country of United States of America. It is located in the area or region or state of California. It is located in the southwest of California. Southwest of California on the Pacific coast. Los Angeles' main weather hazards from El Niño 2026 to 2027 is most likely to be flash flooding and extreme rainfall and rain totals in a short period of time. This is mainly due, the main mechanic behind this is the hyper-fueled subtropical jet stream. And the subtropical jet stream is being pushed further south, straight into Southern California. But what is causing this, the subtropical jet stream's sudden shift in pattern? What is causing this sudden shift in pattern? Well, it's the historic Super El Niño in the equatorial Pacific or the eastern equatorial Pacific. Actually, Super El Niño, the scientifically correct way of saying it, is the very strong El Niño. But there's very warm or very warm and very warm above average temperatures in the eastern equatorial Pacific. Therefore, when the heat is released into the atmosphere, it is going to drastically shift the jet stream, on the subtropical jet stream. It's going to dramatically shift it south. So therefore, it is going to, when the heat is released, the jet stream is going to suddenly come south, and when the heat is released into the atmosphere, especially near the equatorial Pacific, that often occurs alongside with moisture, and that creates huge amounts of thunderstorms and just overall rain, and it just gets released into the atmosphere with very dangerous tropical thunderstorms. But those will calm down once they get to Los Angeles. But it will dump a huge amount of rain on Los Angeles when it's usually they get very low annual rain totals. Usually they get very low annual rain totals when there's going to be over like a couple of months going to be dumping huge amounts of rain. Sometimes 2.75 times the amount of rainfall they get annually. So therefore, this could create massive flash flooding. And this could seriously disrupt the economy of Los Angeles, and this could seriously damage the economy of Los Angeles, and we'll find that out later. But I think it's less likely to create secondary impacts such as waterborne diseases, because just unlike Peru, Los Angeles and California is a first world country with they were better infrastructure and better healthcare to prevent these things. So what are going to be the economic effects on Los Angeles? California's statewide GDP is 4.4 trillion. El Niño is predicted to shave off 8 to 12 billion, which is roughly 0.2 to 0.3% GDP lost. Los Angeles, GDP 1.2 trillion before or current GDP. It is predicted to shave off 3 to 5 billion, 0.3 to 0.5% of the GDP lost. On to the next city. The seventh most affected city by El Niño is Sydney. Sydney has a GDP of 490 billion Australian dollars or 370 billion USD. It has a population of 5.6 million, making it the biggest city in Australia and the biggest city in the continent of Oceania. Where is Sydney located in the world? It's located in the continent of Oceania. It's located in the country of Australia. It is located in the southeast of Australia. It is located in the region of New South Wales. It is located on the southeast coast to the Pacific. This is where Sydney is located. Sydney's weather hazards for El Niño 2026 to 2027 are drought, bushfires, and extreme heat waves. The drought and bushfires are the exact same reason why Indonesia and Jakarta have drought and toxic smog. The natural lying place of warm water in the Pacific is off the coast of Southeast Asia, and specifically off the coast of Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Queensland, Australia, and parts of Indonesia. And when that obviously when that warm air is there, the vapor produces tropical thunderstorms and more rain. And these areas specifically rely on this and the trade winds. And if they stop or reverse the trade winds, it's just going to make stuff worse. But they rely on this warm water to be there. And the ecosystems, the environment, and the economies rely on these warm water to be here. But so when that warm water tracks to the east of the Pacific by the South America and the Central America, it loses all that rain. So therefore, that's going to bring drought and major bushfires to Australia. It's already been vulnerable to that, and it's just going to carry on. So why is it getting extreme heat? The extreme heat waves. Indonesia would have been vulnerable to this, but Indonesia at the end of the day, and Jakarta is an island. It's 31 degrees, but plus humidity is 36. So it's still going to feel sticky and hot, but because it's an island, it's got the moisture to keep it cool to some aspects. It depends if you think 36 is cool compared to the blistering heat waves Australia will have, because Australia is one of the biggest continents and the biggest countries in the world, and because there's no water to cool it down, the heat waves can be extreme and dangerous. They can be 45 degrees or above, and therefore this is the other extreme danger to people, especially in Sydney, because the heat is going to be so much more dangerous than Indonesia. So for the people in Sydney, I'd say the main risks are smoke, respiratory problems from the bushfires, and most importantly, extreme heat waves, which could be seriously endangering to all populations if they're 45 plus. I would say it's probably more 42, 43. I think 45 plus is probably in the middle, but of Australia, or like right in the middle. But 42, 43 can still be extremely dangerous, and this especially to the elderly. And I really feel like these are going to be the major effects. How is this going to affect the economy of Australia and Sydney? Australia's GDP, 2.1 trillion USD. El Niño losses, 21.2 billion to 31.8 billion. What percentage of this is their GDP going to be lost? 1% to 1.5% of Australia's GDP. Sydney's GDP, 360 billion USD, projected to be lost by El Niño, 7.2 billion to 10.8 billion USD. Percentage of GDP destroyed by El Niño, 2% to 3% of their GDP is going to be destroyed by El Niño. That's quite a high percent compared to the whole country's GDP. Right, on to the next city. The sixth city most affected by El Niño is Cape Town, South Africa. Cape Town's GDP is approximately 36.4 billion USD. Its population is 5 million. South Africa has 3 capitals. Cape Town is one of them, and the other 2 are Pretoria and Bloemfontein. I'm going to put them up on the screen if I haven't pronounced them right. Where is Cape Town located in the world? It is located in the continent of Africa. It is located in the country of South Africa. It is located in the southwest of the country of South Africa, and it is located by the coast of the South Atlantic. Cape Town's main weather hazards from El Niño 2026 to 2027 are drought and danger of hitting day zero water retention. Well, South Africa has already been in a drought for many months, and El Niño isn't going to help it. El Niño is going to shift the jet stream and shift huge amounts of moisture annually away from South Africa and Cape Town. Therefore, the drought is going to continue and exacerbate and get worse. This is extremely bad because they're already in extreme drought and they need a bit of relief. But El Niño is going to be the devil and send their relief water away from them because it will shift the jet stream further north. Therefore, they also have a threat, especially in Cape Town, of hitting day zero. If you don't know what day zero is, it's where water reservoirs outside a city, so they're open reservoirs, not underground aquifers. They don't go empty, but they go 10 to 13% of water, which is stored. So usually 100% of water is stored in aquifers, but they get down to the point of 10 to 13% of water, which was in aquifers, in there. If you get me, if you get 10 to 13% of the water, which was 100% in there, the pumps can't pump that small amount of water out of the bottom of that the reservoir, plainly because the pumps just cannot do that. If the government decides to do that, their infrastructure will break. It is very costly to do this, and actually there won't be that much water that you'll get out of pumping. You'll just break your equipment very fast. And so, therefore, the danger of this is there was quite a lot of the metro, because these reservoirs usually serve the metropolitan areas of Cape Town, and these residential areas holding millions of people will go without tap water. So there'll be this is extremely inconvenient and can get dangerous if the military, if a bottle of water and sort of government military rollout of bottles of water and mandatory water gets gridlocked or something goes wrong. This is half the way to pure no water supply. So that usually there'll be a government activates a military style water retention grid. So they'll give you water bottles, and they'll come around historically around with 50 litres to 11 gallons per person per day, and that's all sort of, that is basically like a ration for the war. It's like you have a ration, and that's what you use. So it's it's half the way to pure drought, and this is a huge inconvenience, and this could huge inconvenience and economic huge inconvenience and economic destruction of Cape Town population, and because they can't do stuff which would economically benefit them. Those 50 litres to 11 litres a day are only for their personal washing needs. So therefore it is mainly a massive inconvenience and an economic negative. On to the next city. The fifth city which is going to be most affected by El Niño is Guayaquil, Ecuador. Apologies in advance if I'm pronouncing the city name wrong. The GDP of Guayaquil is a 43 billion USD. The population of Guayaquil is 3.3 million. Where is Guayaquil located in the world? It is located in the continent of South America. It is located in the country of Ecuador. It is located in the region of La Costa, which roughly translates to coastal region. It is in the south of the country. Guayaquil's main weather hazards for El Niño 2026 to 2027 are unprecedented urban flooding, and this could be extremely dangerous and extreme, and economic disruption to shipping ports. Guayaquil is very similar to Lima, Peru. They're on the same western Pacific coast of South America, and they're seeing the same disturbance in the eastern Pacific. Is because the main patch of warm and above average temperature is just off the coast from Ecuador and Peru. So therefore, they're going to be seeing pretty much the exact same hazards, but Guayaquil's could be more extreme for one main reason. Lima's heavy thunderstorms are being dumped on top of the Andes mountain range. As we know, that can create mudslide or hakosa. But there's mud and there's obstacles, there's lakes, there's rivers which take that water away. So therefore, they limit the amount of water. The water which actually gets down to the city centre of Lima might be only 60 or 40% of the rain which actually fell. But Guayaquil has no protection against that. It has no physical meteorological wall of the Andes. And to make it worse, Guayaquil is situated, as you'll see from the radar pictures, around a river. Therefore, if there's huge amounts of rain in a short period of time, specifically from heavy tropical thunderstorms, you can have flooding already on in the urban and residential areas around the river, and then the river bursts its banks. So therefore, this could be extremely dangerous. This could be a massive threat to the residential communities around the river and economies and businesses around the river from flooding, and also again because Ecuador is a second world country, Guayaquil will definitely face some secondary impacts of waterborne diseases. This could seriously endanger vulnerable people, and this could be deadly to certain age groups. So this could be, and also if these rain comes extremely fast with over a very short period of time, this could be deadly because the water and the flash flooding will just be immediate, or be just like there. And there's obviously also because you have ships coming into the river through Guayaquil. If the river overflows and it's too high, this could have major disruption to shipping, imports and exports. So this could heavily affect Guayaquil's economy. We'll find that out now. Ecuador's GDP, 138.2 billion USD. 4 billion USD projected to be lost through El Niño effects. That equates to roughly 2.9% of the whole GDP. That's quite a lot. Guayaquil's GDP, 43 billion USD. A projected El Niño loss, 4.7 billion USD. So 4.7 billion USD lost through El Niño effects. That equates for a ridiculous amount, the highest I've seen so far, 15% of the whole of the GDP. That's a huge amount. On to the next city. The fourth city most affected by El Niño is Mumbai. Mumbai's GDP is approximately 310 billion USD, and a massive population Mumbai has of 22.5 million. Where is Mumbai located in the world? Mumbai is located in the continent of Asia. Mumbai is located in the country of India. Mumbai is located in the region of Maharashtra. Mumbai is located on the western coast of which goes out into the Indian Ocean of India. Mumbai's main weather hazards from El Niño 2026 to El Niño 2027 are extreme drought and extreme deprivation of rainfall totals. Well, as we know with the El Niño, when El Niño forms, trade winds, which usually flow from east to west, can stop, or in some extreme, or in less extreme cases, they can still be going east to west, but very weak. And in some extreme cases, they can stop or even reverse. And in this super El Nino, which is going to be 3 to 4 degrees, which is going to be the strongest in living memory, super strong scientific correct term, is going to look like it could reverse or stop completely. Therefore, this could shut off India's monsoon season. And of all the cities in India which most needs the monsoon, it looks like it's Mumbai. India is vital to say the monsoon is the heart of India's agriculture sector. It is vitally important. This could extremely damage India's economy, probably the country which is going to be hurt the most in amount of money. Yes, just it's gonna, because the monsoon season this season has already been decreased by 40 to 50%. It's already been 40 to 50% weaker than it usually is, and in some El Niños that's the pinnacle. But this is only when it's developing, so it can only predict it to be getting worse. So maybe next monsoon season, 2027, they might not get any rain, and therefore this will dry out their crops. And it is very important to say their crops all over India. First of all, India has a huge population, around in the billions. I can't remember how much it is, but I'll put it up on the screen. But and also India is a massive exporter. India and also Mumbai, they'll be growing rice and different plants inland out. So Mumbai is by the coast from the Indian Ocean. They'll be growing loads of plants and loads of crops inland from Mumbai, and that's a massive exporter and economic maker and a massive GDP booster for Mumbai, because they grow them outside and then they export them. And this could be the same for the whole of India, because they're going to be limiting on rice and other crops. They could completely collapse. Therefore, this actually also affects quite a lot of the world too, because India is a massive exporter. So this could not only affect Mumbai and India, this could affect the world in general. India's GDP, 4.2 trillion USD, 50 billion to 83 billion USD. Projected to be lost through El Niño effects, which is roughly 1.2 to 2% of the annual GDP. Mumbai's GDP, 320 billion USD, 4 billion to 6.5 billion USD, projected to be lost through El Niño effects. 1.2 to 2% of the annual GDP is projected to be lost through El Niño effects in Mumbai. On to the next city. The third city which is going to be most affected by El Niño is Miami.
Sun is shining, sky so blue. Feel the ocean, just me and you. Sandy beaches.
GDP of Miami, 416 billion USD. Population of Miami, 6.2 million.
Move your feet.
Where is Miami located in the world? Miami is located in the continent of North America. Miami is located in the country of United States of America. Miami is located in the state of Florida. Miami is on the southeast coast of Florida, or the southeast of Florida, and it is bordering the Atlantic Ocean, or it's going into the Atlantic Ocean. Miami's weather hazards for El Niño 2026 to 2027. It's a bit of a plot twist, Miami, because unlike the rest of the cities, Miami and Florida is going to be mainly getting a big fat positive from El Niño. mainly because El Niño and with its wind shear stops decreases frequency and strength of hurricanes in hurricane season hitting Florida and the Caribbean. But one thing I do want to quickly stress is, I'm not saying there's not going to be any hurricanes hitting Florida. No, I do want to warn you, because sometimes the strong ones can slip through the barriers, and especially when Florida is unprepared, those can be some of the worst ones. Some of the worst ones happening in the El Niño years. If a hurricane comes, do please listen to your local weather forecaster. So, how does super El Niño and historic El Niño, very strong El Niño, prevent most hurricanes and strength of hurricanes and frequency of hurricanes, and how does a historical El Niño and a very, very strong El Niño disrupt the hurricane season in the Atlantic? So we all know that when these really warm above average water, you could even say hot in extreme cases, starts releasing its heat into the atmosphere, there's also air which is released. So we talked about the moisture. We'll talk about the long. Maybe we'll do a separate video talking about the long sort of effects of the heat for 2027. It's obviously going to be the hottest year on record. Highly predicted to be the hottest year on record, like 95%, which is a super high percent for massive science agencies. But on from that, and then it also releases air when it releases heat, moisture, and it also releases air. And this air goes 40,000 foot into the atmosphere, and it latches on and creates the subtropical jet stream. And then this is pushed eastwards, and therefore this really fast air can disrupt hurricanes because it's massive wind shear, and this just breaks something up. Think about putting a hot lava in the ice. It just breaks the hurricane up, and therefore it just becomes a weak tropical storm, or it just dissipates completely because the wind shear is so much. And I would highly predict in weaker El Niño years, definitely in Florida, they get a couple more hurricanes. But I think in this year, there might only be one or none. I think the wind shear is going to be so powerful it could really prevent these hurricanes hitting Florida. So what I want to talk about now is the economic benefits of El Niño for Florida, which is definitely something we haven't discussed yet. Florida's GDP, 28.8 trillion USD. 28.7 billion to 57.5 billion USD will be saved from El Niño effects from hurricanes. That is about 0.1% to 0.2% of their total annual economy. Miami, 416 billion USD, 4.16 billion to 8.32 billion USD will be saved by El Niño. That is about 1 to 2% of their annual GDP. This will positively affect Florida and Miami for sure. This will positively affect Miami and Florida for sure. On to the next city. The second city which is most affected by El Niño is Bogota, Colombia. Bogota's GDP is 115 billion USD. Bogota's population is 7.9 million. Where is Bogota located in the world? Bogota is located in the continent of South America. Bogota is located in the country of Colombia. Bogota is located in the region of Disco Capital, which roughly translates to a capital district. Bogota is located in central Colombia. Bogota's main weather hazards from El Niño 2026 to 2027 are hydraulic power failure and energy crisis, energy failure in the city or the country potentially. Well, you're probably thinking at this point, how does energy infrastructure relate to El Niño in any type of way? Well, in Colombia, there is a very specific thing which meets them in a quite catastrophic way for El Niño. Well, it's quite amazing. For Colombia, it gets a staggering 75% of its electricity from dams and water processes, so sort of like dams and sort of hydraulic electricity through water and stuff, and that mainly through dams and through waterfalls. That's how they get their electricity, a staggering 75%. But El Nino, for especially the north of South America, especially the north of South America, is taking that subtropical jet stream, where it's usually further north, going straight through the equator, but now the El Nino, with all that warm water coming up from the equatorial Pacific, it is pushing the jet stream further, the subtropical jet stream, further south into, we've already talked about it in Lima, we've already talked about it in Guajala, Ecuador, but instead, because of all this warm moisture, is being all this warm air and moisture is pushing the subtropical jet stream further south, and that's leaving the equator, and especially northern South America, completely exposed, especially. But what makes it doubly as worse is you could arguably tell it's not completely El Nino's fault. It's the infrastructure. You know, they probably shouldn't be relying on 75% of their total electricity. They should be spreading out through nuclear, coal, solar, wind, because just relying on one is going to leave you completely vulnerable to these types of weather events like El Nino. So therefore, subtropical jet stream is going further south. Therefore, there's going to be drought. There's going to be no water going through their river systems and dams. So therefore, there's going to be no water going through their hydraulic electricity system. Therefore, they can't generate electricity, and electricity is one of the most important things for a city and a country to cope. So technically, I would say this is actually a bad mistake by Colombia's government for putting too much of their electricity in their infrastructure from one source. You need to spread it out. Right. On to what this affects for Colombia's and Bogota's GDP. Colombia's GDP, 457 billion USD. 6.8 billion to 9.1 billion USD projected to be lost through El Nino effects. That's about 1.5 to 2% of their entire annual GDP. Bogota's GDP, 115 billion USD. 2.3 to 3.4 USD projected to be lost through El Nino effects. That is roughly about 2 to 3% of their annual GDP. On to the next city. Final one. The city which is going to be worst affected by El Nino is Manila, Philippines. Manila is the capital of the Philippines. Manila has a GDP of 130 billion USD. It has a population of 14.9 million. Manila is the capital of the Philippines. Manila has a GDP of 130 billion USD. It has a population of 14.9 million. Manila's main weather hazards from El Nino 2026 to 2027 is going to be tropical typhoons. The tropical, it's quite amazing. This is the worst city which is going to be affected, and all it needs is one weather hazard, and that is a tropical typhoon. Obviously in the typhoon season, autumn for the northern hemisphere and spring for the southern hemisphere. This is going to be devastating because, as we see up in Miami, hurricanes are being destroyed by wind shear, and those wind shear to destroy massive tropical hurricanes have to be extremely strong. So therefore, because the trade winds are going to be going they were going east to west, but the trade winds are now going west to east. So therefore, this is going to fuel the tropical typhoons, because the wind is going the right direction to fuel them and catch on into the tropical typhoon to make it even stronger. Instead of it being wind shear, it's just going to be a more power to these tropical typhoons. And these tropical typhoons could be extremely dangerous. They could be some of the most powerful we've ever seen. Yes, so that's the end. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed and found it interesting about the top 10 cities affected by El Niño 2026 to 2027. I really hope this gave you a bit of information. And I just want to quickly shout out, thank you so much to Zoom Earth and Google Earth. They're great websites. Please do and check them out on Google. And yes, so if you did enjoy this video, I spent a lot of time trying to make it, please like, that would be absolutely amazing. And if you really do enjoy this content, and please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. So thank you so much for watching Open Your Mind. Goodbye.